Hey everyone, welcome back to the shop. This week we are going to make a wobble bowl. Definitely a different style, so stick around, see how it's done. All right, so our first job here is going to be mounting this on the lathe. And to do that, we are going to find the center. And so first thing we're gonna do is look at the grain to figure out which side we want. And because the grain is going this way, we actually wanna mount it on the bowl that way so that as the bowls turn, the shape of the rings matches the shape of the bowl. And so we're gonna use this as our top. And so we have to find center. And for this piece, roughly 4 inches. Again, just take a couple of measurements, try and figure out what is center on this bowl. Again, this is a wonky blank. It's actually one of my own blanks. I cut this years ago and it's just been sitting on a shelf waiting for a project to come up. And so here we go, have a project. We have a rough center point. Mark that with a center punch, then bring our drill. And this drill has a tape flag. And so the gap here under the tape is how deep we need it to be for the drill chuck. And the tape here serves as a flag. But really the best part about this is as you are spinning, wood shavings and chips are gonna collect on the surface of the blank. And what you're gonna do is wait till they get pushed away by the flag. And once the flag pushes everything away, you know you're at the right depth. So bring it in, start screwing. And there you can see, area right around here is clear chips, around here is not, and that's simply where that flag of tape pushed all those chips away. And now the piece is mounted up on the lathe. Again, just screwed onto a screw chuck. This is pretty out of round. This was cut 2 or 3 years ago. And again, it's just been sitting on the rack waiting to be turned. So definitely some interesting colors, definitely some interesting process. Don't know how I cut this one up, but we're about to find out. So we're gonna cut this. And again, shaping this is pretty simple. Just cut a rough bowl shape. Again, we're gonna have to do some final work at the end, but just enough so that we have that kind of perfect curve going into a spigot at the bottom to grab on a chuck. So that said, let's get turning. here we have it, our finished bowl. Again, the outside is profiled, and we're gonna have to do this profile twice because we're gonna have to do it once that comes off the bowl again, the inside again. But for right now, it's pretty good rough out. Do have one nice good sized crack running through here, which again, for me, that's just whatever. It's gonna live like that. So what we're gonna do real quick is give this a quick sanding just with 80 grit sandpaper, just to kind of take down any of the roughness. And then we are going to turn it around, grip it with our chuck, and turn out the inside. So again, not much of the finish on the outside because we will have to actually turn this a second time. Now that the piece is all sanded, I kind of want to explain my process of sanding. I stack up all my grits. I go from 80 to 180 to 320, 4, 6, and then to 1200 grit. And I have them stacked up. And what I do is I stand each of those in each direction. So lay in clockwise and in counterclockwise. And that allows me to ensure that there's no burrs on either side. But one of the big things I do is that I use compressed air to blow out the pores. And on a lot of woods, that's not necessary. Really hard maple, it almost does nothing. But for a piece of oak like this with such open pores, every single grit needs to be blown out and in every single direction. And what it does is it blows out the pores and ensures that you get a glass smooth finish. Otherwise, those pores fill up with sawdust, and then as you're sanding and sanding and sanding, they don't really cut all the way to the surface. They don't cut a perfectly smooth finish. And then when you put finish on, all that sawdust comes out of the pores and you get a rough finish. So now that this piece is sanded all the way up and the pores are nice and cleaned out, we're gonna take a piece of paper towel, some walnut oil, and finish off the inside. Now that we are done, the walnut oil is buffed, it is set and ready to go. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pop the chuck off of the spindle, and we're actually gonna mount it in the tail sprocket in the spindle adapter. And then I'm going to put a vacuum chuck on here that will suck vacuum pressure from the bottom of this bowl to hold it so that we can work on the bottom without having any other work holding. So let's get to that. All right, so now it's set and it is ready to pull a vacuum. Once I do turn the vacuum chuck on, since it does run on my air compressor, the air compressor is gonna kick on every minute or so while it keeps pressure. And so the process for this is pretty simple. We're just going to turn this and get a nice subtle flow from the rim all the way to the bottom. There's gonna be no flat spot, and that is on purpose. We want it to have a nice round the entire way through. Once that's done, we'll have it, sand the piece up, and then we can finish her off. All right, so we paused turning here because we had a catch. And not only do we have a catch, but the catch blew out on the inside of the bowl. Now, we can actually pull this off the vacuum chuck. I have turned it off, and simply because we can pull it off, we do now have that dead center point in the bottom that we can reference off of. But if we look, we have knocked out a good chunk of the bowl. And again, for many people, this would be a failure point. This is where we call, oh my God, what do I knocked out this big old chunk of wood. And for me, well, for me, this just looks like we're gonna do a stitchy rocking bowl. So we're gonna take this over to the bench real quick. We're gonna cut down on this crack. And again, there is a crack running this entire point from here all the way up. And so we are just going to run that crack down a little bit, probably to about almost its whole terminus, run a blade through there to get a clean thing, drill some holes, stitch her up. And this is definitely not what I had planned for this bowl, but hey, work with what you got. And so we are back on the lathe now. All the holes are drilled for our stitches. This slot is cleaned up as good as it is going to get. Now we do have to make one cut that is unique to this bowl now. We do have to clean up this little shoulder that I had put in. Again, a decorative move, but one clean cut will handle that. And then we have to go back and finish shaping. It does still hold vacuum, which I am very excited about. And so we're going to turn the vacuum chuck back on, pull the tailstock away, get one good clean cut to round this whole piece out, and then we will sand the outside and call this piece finished. Again, definitely a turn I did not expect this bowl to take, but hey, work with what you've got. we have it, our finished bowl. Not exactly what we set out to create. We did get our wobble bowl though, so there is no flat spot on this. And when you rest this on a countertop, it will just wobble and wobble away. Now, that chip did take out a bit and we did cut out a little more than needed, but it does add a cool, interesting effect that does save this piece. Most people would have thrown this right in the burn bin the second that little pop happened, but because I stitched my bowls back together, I'm able to give it a second lease on life. And a rather interesting piece of wood to save. It does have some really cool spalting that adds a lot of color and contrast, and that cool edge detail is definitely something you don't normally see on a bowl. So, if you liked the video, please like, subscribe to the channel to see more like this. And as always, have a great day, everybody.